The worst part wasn't that they forgot, it was realizing they never even tried to remember. I used to think neglect was silence, but it's louder than any scream when it comes from the people who raised you. That morning, I turned 30, and the world I'd been trying to hold together for years finally let go of me. I sat at my kitchen table, staring at the single cupcake I'd bought from the bakery downstairs, a tiny swirl of pink frosting collapsing under the weight of its own sweetness. The candle had already burned out once. I'd relit it just to feel less pathetic. Maybe if I blew it out again, I'd feel 30. Instead, I felt invisible. My phone buzzed beside the plate. For a moment my heart jumped, foolish and hopeful. But it wasn't a happy birthday message. It was a notification from Instagram. Brooke, my sister smiling in oversized sunglasses at the airport. Surprise trip to Paris. Thank you, Mom and Dad. Best birthday gift ever. The comments were filled with confetti emojis, heart eyes, family pride, and pinned at the very top was my mother's comment. She's the only one who makes us proud. The words hit harder than I expected, like a bruise I didn't know was still there. I scrolled through the post, hoping maybe I'd misread it. But no, every pixel screamed it back at me. I glanced around my small Richmond apartment. The quiet hum of the fridge, the pale winter light spilling across the floor, the single plant wilting on the counter. It was the kind of silence that feels like judgment. I called my mother anyway. The phone rang 4 times before she answered, breathless. Oh, Ashley, hi. I'm at the airport with your sister. Can I call you back? It's my birthday, Mom. A pause. Then, distractedly. Oh, right. Happy birthday, honey. Listen, we're boarding. I'll call you later, okay? The line clicked dead before I could answer. I sat there for a long time, staring at the frosting melting under the candle flame. 30 years of trying, of keeping the peace, sending money, pretending not to notice who got the front row applause, and I was still the afterthought. Brooke got Paris. I got, oh right. When I was 8, they'd once canceled my birthday dinner because Brooke had the flu. My father had promised we'd make it up next weekend, but next weekend became never. I remembered sitting on the staircase that night, watching them fuss over her with soup and blankets, whispering to myself that when I grew up, I'd be good enough that they couldn't forget me. Now, sitting in my dim apartment 2 decades later, I realized I'd been chasing that promise ever since. By noon, I was done pretending. I closed the curtains, shoved the cupcake into the trash, and opened my laptop. The familiar login screen for the joint account blinked back at me. That account, the one I'd been contributing to every month since Dad's heart scare. $500 transferred automatically, like clockwork. 6 years. I'd done it because family meant responsibility, because they'd raised me to believe that love was something you proved with sacrifice. But love, I was beginning to realize, shouldn't require bleeding yourself dry. The balance looked healthy, too healthy. I scrolled through the transactions, heart pounding as my fingers hovered above the mouse. Grocery stores, utilities, then a $4,000 payment to a travel agency, another to a boutique, and finally, a $10,000 transfer to Brooke's personal account labeled gift. The numbers blurred. My breath came shallow. That wasn't love. That was theft wrapped in parental entitlement. For years, I'd skipped vacations, eaten instant noodles, stayed late at work to scrape through. Every, I'm fine, I'd said had been a small lie to keep them comfortable. But in this quiet kitchen, with the smell of stale coffee and betrayal thick in the air, something inside me finally snapped. Not loudly, but cleanly, like a rope giving way after too much strain. They hadn't just forgotten my birthday, they'd forgotten me. And as the screen glowed back at me with cold, indifferent numbers, I whispered into the empty room, not anymore. I didn't sleep that night. I kept seeing those numbers in my mind, $36,000, the sum of 6 quiet years of faith. Every zero felt like an echo of all the times I'd told myself it didn't matter, that family came first. But somewhere between midnight and dawn, that belief cracked wide open. At 2 a.m., I brewed coffee I didn't need and opened the bank app again, staring at the history as if it would rewrite itself. I traced each transaction like an archaeologist uncovering the truth about her own ruins. Travel agency, $4,000. Boutique, $1,500. Gift, $10,000. There it was proof that my sacrifices had been painted over with Brooke's glittering Paris filter. I imagined her twirling beneath the Eiffel Tower, hair catching the golden light while my mother filmed proudly. And somewhere between the Louvre and a wine toast, I wondered if they thought of me at all. Probably not. My family had always had a talent for selective amnesia. Growing up, Brooke was the sunshine. I was the steady one. It sounded flattering, until I realized steady meant invisible. She got tutoring when she failed math. I got told, "You'll be fine." She got front row applause at dance recitals. I got "We're proud of you too," honey murmured over the sound of car doors closing. By the time I was 15, I'd stopped asking for attention. I learned to make myself small, efficient, dependable. The kind of daughter who sent reminders, not complaints. And that's why, at 24, when Dad's heart attack left them drowning in bills, I hadn't hesitated. I just offered, "I'll help." I remembered sitting in their kitchen that night, Brooke scrolling on her phone while I spoke. My mom had patted my hand, eyes already glazed with relief. "You're such a good girl, Ashley." Good girl. Not loved, not valued, just convenient. Now, 6 years later, that same good girl was realizing she'd been financing a lie. I started calculating on a napkin, my hands trembling. $500 a month, 72 months, that's $36,000. My stomach twisted. $36,000 I'd earned through overtime, sales trips, missed weekends, money that was supposed to keep them afloat after Dad's surgery, money I thought I was giving to love. Instead, it had bought my sister champagne and silk dresses in Paris. Something bitter rose in my throat. I clicked the transfer button and watched the cursor blink like a heartbeat. Could I really take it back? Was it wrong to reclaim what was mine? The moral part of me, the part they'd raised, whispered family first. But another voice, deeper, sharper, older, whispered they never put you first. That voice was the one I chose to listen to. I began small, moving $1,000 back into my own account every few days, like a thief sneaking through her own house. With each transfer, I waited for guilt to flood in, but it didn't. What came instead was a strange, thrilling clarity. For once I was choosing myself. Still, at night, I'd lie awake and wonder what would happen when they noticed. I rehearsed conversations in my head, imagined my father's wounded tone, my mother's disbelief, Brooke's confusion. I pictured the moment they'd look at me not as the steady one, but as the problem. But I couldn't stop. The next morning, the sun cut through my blinds, slicing the room into pale rectangles. I made oatmeal, tasted nothing, and kept refreshing the bank page between bites. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about balance. When I hit the final transfer, $36,000 exactly, I closed the laptop and exhaled like I'd been underwater for years. My phone buzzed again that afternoon. Brooke's name flashed across the screen. I hesitated, then answered. "Ashley. Oh my God, Paris is amazing." Her laughter sounded like champagne bubbles. "Mom and Dad are being so generous, I swear. I've never seen them this happy. You have to come here one day." My jaw clenched. "Sounds nice. You okay? You sound weird." "I'm fine," I lied. "Well, I just wanted to say thank you. I know you've been helping Mom and Dad out financially, and I'm sure that's part of why they could do this for me. So, thank you, big sis." She meant it, I think. That was the worst part. Brooke's world had always been too soft to understand the cuts she left behind. "Don't worry about it," I said flatly. "You're the best sister ever," she chirped. When the call ended, I stared at my reflection in the dark phone screen. For the first time, I didn't recognize the woman looking back. Her eyes weren't kind. They were tired, sharp, awake. That night, I didn't light another candle. I didn't check Instagram. I poured a glass of wine, lifted it toward the ceiling, and whispered, "Here's to finally stopping the bleeding." And somewhere deep down, I knew it wasn't the money that I'd taken back. It was my power. The first few nights after I took the money back, guilt felt like static in my chest. I couldn't focus, couldn't sleep. Every creak in my apartment sounded like an accusation. But then, something strange happened. The silence stopped feeling like punishment. It started feeling like peace. I'd spent years being the one who always fixed things, who made sure everyone else was comfortable, even when I was falling apart inside. And now, for the first time, I wasn't fixing anything. I was simply letting it break. I sat by my window one night, watching the streetlights paint thin gold lines across the floor. Below, a couple argued by their car, voices muffled by distance. She crossed her arms. He gestured wildly. Even from up here, I could see it, the need to be heard, the exhaustion of trying. I realized that was me, for 30 years, pleading for acknowledgement in a language my family never cared to learn. The next morning, I woke up early and cleaned my apartment top to bottom. I scrubbed the sink until it gleamed, threw out the wilted plant, rearranged the furniture. Every movement felt like reclaiming space that had quietly been taken from me. By noon, I stood in the doorway, hands on hips, and whispered, "Mine." The phone rang again that evening, Brooke, of course. I stared at the screen until it went dark. Then it rang again, and again. On the third day, I answered. "Ashley, oh my God, you have to see this city," she squealed. "We went to the Louvre yesterday, and tonight we're having dinner by the Eiffel Tower. Mom's planning to surprise me with a spa day tomorrow. Can you believe it?" "I can," I said quietly. She laughed, not noticing the edge in my voice. "You sound weird. Are you okay?" "Just busy." "Well, I just wanted to thank you. I know you've been helping Mom and Dad. I'm sure that's part of how they could do this. So, thank you." I almost laughed, but it came out more like a breath through clenched teeth. "Don't worry about it. You're seriously the best sister ever." When I hung up, I felt something harden inside me. Not hatred, just a quiet, irreversible distance. The kind that forms when you finally understand you're not part of the same story anymore. For days, I kept thinking about those transfers. The absurdity of it. My money had been transformed into champagne bubbles, designer shoes, hotel balconies overlooking the Seine. While I'd been eating noodles and pretending contentment, they'd been living off the version of me they invented, the dependable provider who didn't need thanks. I couldn't unsee it now. And with each thought, my guilt receded a little more, replaced by a sharper awareness. I wasn't the villain here. I was the collateral. At work, I found myself speaking up more during meetings, catching my manager off guard. "You seem different," he said once, half amused. More assertive. Maybe because for the first time, I wasn't carrying anyone else's weight. That night, I stood on my balcony, the city breathing quietly below. A drizzle started, light at first, then steady. I lifted my hand, felt the cool drops soak through my sleeve. For years, I'd been waiting for my family to make me feel seen. Now, I realized visibility wasn't something they could give me. It was something I had to claim. The rain smelled like clean beginnings. I whispered into the dark, "This is mine now." Then, a vibration broke the calm. My phone, Dad's name on the screen. I didn't answer. I wasn't ready. The next day, I checked the account again. Still quiet. No new messages, no angry calls. They hadn't noticed yet, or maybe they had and didn't want to believe it. Either way, I wasn't afraid anymore. When I finally fell asleep that night, it was dreamless, deep, and solid, like rest that had been waiting years to find me. In the morning, sunlight spilled through the curtains, and for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel like a new day I had to survive. It felt like one I'd earned. It happened 12 days later, on a Sunday morning when the city felt half asleep. I was making coffee when my phone lit up with Dad's name. My first instinct was to let it ring, but the sound felt like a pulse I couldn't ignore. I set the mug down and answered. His voice was calm, measured the tone he used when he wanted to sound reasonable before delivering disappointment. "Ashley, we need to talk." A chill slipped through me. "About what?" "The account," he said. "There's been an issue. Over $30,000 disappeared. The bank says it was transferred out." I leaned against the counter, heart steady but hands trembling. "It wasn't an issue, Dad. I withdrew it." Silence stretched. Then, sharp and cold. "You what?" "It's my money," I said quietly. "I put it in there. I took it back out." The silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was the kind that comes when the mask finally cracks. "Ashley, that money was for emergencies," he said, voice tightening. We were counting on it. Emergencies, I repeated. Like a surprise trip to Paris? Another pause. That's different. How? My voice rose before I could stop it. Because it was for Brooke? Because her happiness is always the kind that matters? His sigh came through the line, heavy and rehearsed. Brooke's been under a lot of stress. She needed a break. And I didn't? I said, my throat tightening. I've been sending you money for 6 years, Dad. 6 years. And not once did either of you say thank you. Not once did you ask if I was okay. That's not fair, he snapped, but his conviction faltered halfway through. No, I said softly. What's not fair is that you raised 2 daughters and decided only one was worth celebrating. I could hear Mom's voice in the background then, sharp, agitated. Give me the phone. The next second, she was there. Ashley, how could you do this to us? We trusted you. I almost laughed. You trusted me? You've been lying to me for years. We didn't lie, she shot back. We just didn't think you'd make such a big deal out of it. $36,000 isn't a big deal? Her voice grew shrill. Brooke is going through a lot right now. She needed our support. And I didn't. The silence on the other end was all the answer I needed. You and your father are very disappointed in you, she said finally. I closed my eyes. Of course you are. I'm always the disappointment, aren't I? Brooke gets love, I get lectures. That's not true. When's the last time you celebrated anything I did, Mom? I interrupted. When's the last time you even asked how I was doing? There was a long, brittle pause. Then, we'll talk when you've calmed down. The line went dead. I stood there, phone in hand, listening to the sound of my own breathing. The world outside felt distant. The hum of traffic, a dog barking, someone's laughter bleeding through the window. My own kitchen looked unfamiliar, like I'd just walked into a stranger's life. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come. Instead, there was a hollow ache, heavy and clean, like something had finally been scraped out of me. That night, I poured wine into the same glass I'd used on my birthday and sat on the floor. My reflection rippled on the surface, distorted, softer somehow. For years, I'd been told that family love was unconditional. But now I saw the fine print. The conditions had always been there, written in the tone of their voices, in the way their eyes slid past me at every dinner table. When I finally slept, I dreamed of our old house. I was 10, sitting by the window, watching Brooke unwrap a birthday present while Mom filmed and Dad clapped. I waited for them to turn, to notice me. They never did. I woke up at dawn, heart pounding, sheets damp with sweat. By the time I walked into work that morning, something inside me had shifted. My coworker Vanessa smiled from across the cubicles. You look different, she said. I think I finally am. Later, during lunch, I stared at my phone again at the missed calls from my parents. The unread messages that all began with, "You need to understand." I didn't need to understand anymore. I'd spent 30 years understanding. That evening, I stood by the window again. City lights flickering below like distant promises. The air felt lighter somehow, like I'd stepped out of a heavy coat I didn't know I was wearing. They thought they'd taught me loyalty, but what they'd really taught me was endurance. And endurance, I was learning, can become freedom when you stop using it to survive other people's expectations. After that call, the silence in my apartment changed. It wasn't heavy anymore, it was honest. No more pretending, no more waiting for their apologies that would never come. The air felt strange at first, too open, like I'd stepped out of a room I'd been trapped in for years. But with every quiet morning that passed, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Possibility. It began small. I stopped checking my phone for their messages. I deleted the group chat that had once been a thread of control disguised as family connection. Then, one afternoon, sitting at my desk, an ad popped up on my computer. Medical billing and coding, 6-month certification, build a new career. I don't know why that line hit me the way it did, but I clicked. I read about the program, the schedule, the tuition, $8,000 up front. Before, that number would have made me shrink. But now, I had the means, and more importantly, the courage. That night, I filled out the form, paid the deposit, and closed the laptop with a sense of trembling purpose. For once, I was investing in something that wouldn't vanish into someone else's life. The first class met on a Tuesday evening. The building smelled like coffee and printer ink. I sat in the third row, surrounded by people who were all starting over for different reasons: divorce, layoffs, reinvention. It was humbling and comforting. I wasn't the only one trying to rebuild. That's where I met Patricia. She was in her 40s, a single mom who'd been laid off from a factory job after 15 years. During our first break, we found ourselves standing in line for coffee. "You look like you belong here," she said, smiling. I laughed softly. "I don't feel like it yet." "You will," she said. "Women like us always do. We just take the long road." Over the next few weeks, that long road started to feel less lonely. Patricia became my anchor. We studied together, shared snacks, and talked about everything from rent to resilience. One afternoon, she looked at me over her notebook and said, "You're doing the right thing, you know. You're breaking a pattern." I blinked at her. "What pattern?" "The one where you give everything away and call it love." Her words sat with me long after class ended. I realized how true they were, that I'd been trained to equate sacrifice with worth, to believe that if I kept giving, one day they'd love me enough to stop taking. But it doesn't work that way. It never did. At work, Vanessa started noticing the difference too. She was my colleague in sales, a sharp, funny woman with a talent for reading people. "You've been smiling lately," she said one morning by the coffee machine. "New boyfriend?" I smirked. "New boundaries." She laughed. "Even better." We began having lunch together, and for the first time, I told someone a piece of the truth. Not all of it, but enough. About my family, about the money, about the feeling of being erased. She listened quietly, no interruptions, no pity. When I finished, she said, "You did the right thing. They took advantage of you." "I keep telling myself that," I admitted. "But part of me still feels guilty." "Because you're decent," she said. "Decent people always feel guilty when they stop being exploited." That line hit me harder than she probably realized. I'd been confusing decency with obedience for so long. The course grew harder, the hours longer, but I loved it. Every new concept felt like proof that I could build something for myself. I spent my weekends in a corner booth at a small cafe near my apartment, surrounded by textbooks and highlighters. The barista started remembering my order: a caramel latte and a blueberry muffin. It was a small thing, but it felt like belonging. One rainy Saturday, Patricia and I sat together, both half buried in study guides. "You ever think about what you'll do when this is over?" she asked. I smiled faintly. "Start over, I guess." "Good," she said, sipping her coffee. "You deserve a life that feels like it's yours." That night, as thunder rolled outside, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about what she said. For years, my life had been something borrowed, spent in service of people who never said thank you. But now, every page I read, every note I wrote, felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I'd lost. The guilt didn't vanish overnight, it faded slowly, replaced by something steadier. Pride, maybe. Or peace. I stopped checking Brooke's Instagram. I stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. I started looking at apartments closer to the hospital district, imagining what it would feel like to live near where my new life could begin. And one quiet evening, as I was leaving class, the sunset caught on the glass doors and filled the hallway with amber light. I paused, watching my reflection tired, yes, but clear-eyed, standing tall. For the first time in years, I didn't see someone trying to prove her worth. I saw someone who already had it. 2 months into the course, life began to settle into a rhythm: work, study, sleep, repeat. It was exhausting, but it felt clean, predictable. No drama, no guilt, just forward motion. Until the email arrived. I almost didn't open it. The subject line read, "We need to talk about this situation." My stomach twisted before I even clicked. It was from my mother. The message was long, polished, manipulative, and dripping with self-pity. "Ashley, your father and I have been discussing your recent behavior, and we think you owe us an explanation. Taking that money was extremely selfish, especially when you knew we had plans. Brooke has been very upset, and frankly, so have we. Family supports each other. You've let us down. Please return the money immediately and apologize so we can move on." They still didn't understand. They still thought I was a resource, not a person. I read it 3 times, fury blooming slow and hot behind my ribs. Then I started typing. "Mom, I don't owe you anything, not an explanation, not an apology, and certainly not that money. I gave it to you in good faith for emergencies, not vacations. You used it for Brooke, not bills. I'm done being your bank account. Don't contact me again unless you're ready to talk honestly about how you've treated me for the last 30 years. I hit send before I could soften the edges. For the first time, I didn't edit myself for their comfort. That night, I went to class feeling both sick and alive. Patricia glanced at me when I sat down. "You look lighter," she said. "I told the truth," I replied. She smiled. "Good. It's about time." A week later, something unexpected happened. After class, my instructor Diane asked me to stay behind. She was one of those women who radiated quiet authority, silver hair, no-nonsense tone, but eyes that softened when she smiled. "Ashley, I wanted to talk to you about your work," she said, folding her hands. "You're one of my top students. Have you thought about what you'll do after the program?" "I was hoping to find something stable," I said. "Maybe at a clinic or hospital." "Well," she said, "I have a friend who's hiring. The billing department at Virginia Commonwealth University Health is looking for someone. Senior position, full benefits, great pay. You'd have to interview, of course, but I'd recommend you." For a moment I forgot how to breathe. "Really?" "Really," she said, smiling. "You've earned it." I walked home that night through the cold air, heart pounding. For years I'd been invisible, useful, dependable, but unseen. And now, someone saw me. Not because I gave or sacrificed, but because I was capable. That weekend, I prepared for the interview like my life depended on it. I bought a navy blazer that made me feel taller. Vanessa helped me practice questions during lunch breaks, teasing me whenever I got too formal. "You don't have to be perfect," she said. "Just be honest. You're the kind of person who shows up, and that's rare." On the morning of the interview, I woke before sunrise. My hands shook as I applied my makeup, not out of fear, but disbelief. I'd spent so long surviving that I didn't know how to feel when something good was finally within reach. The hospital lobby smelled faintly of antiseptic and coffee. The hiring manager, Caroline, greeted me with a warm handshake. We talked about my sales background, my coursework, my attention to detail. She asked what motivated me to switch careers. "Honestly," I said, "I wanted to build something of my own. I've spent too many years helping other people live comfortably while I struggled to stay afloat. It was time to change that." She nodded, thoughtful. "We need people like you, steady, but strong." 2 days later, the call came. "Hi Ashley, this is Caroline. I just wanted to let you know we'd like to offer you the position. Starting salary $75,000 a year." I sank into my chair, eyes burning. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you so much." When I hung up, the apartment around me felt too small to contain the feeling. Relief, disbelief, pride, all tangled into something electric. I had done this. Without my family, without approval, without anyone's help but my own. That evening, Vanessa insisted we go out to celebrate. We sat in a cozy wine bar downtown, the air thick with laughter and music. "You deserve this," she said, raising her glass. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong," I admitted. She smiled gently. "Nothing's going wrong. You just stopped letting people drain you. That's not luck, Ashley. That's healing." When I came home later, the night air was cool and quiet. For once, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own life. I opened my laptop, found my acceptance letter, and read it twice just to make sure it was real. Then I whispered into the stillness, "I did it." And for the first time in 30 years, I believed it. 3 weeks passed before I heard from them again. I'd been living in quiet relief, going to work, finishing assignments, buying groceries without checking my balance twice. I'd stopped expecting chaos. So when the unknown number flashed across my phone, I almost ignored it. But something in me, curiosity, maybe old habit, made me answer. "Ashley?" The voice was shaky, hesitant. "Brooke." I froze. "Brooke? I just got back from Paris. What the hell happened? Mom and Dad are furious. They said you stole their savings. My jaw tightened. It wasn't their savings. It was mine. They said you took $30,000. 36, I corrected. And yes, I did, because I'm done funding your vacations. There was a long pause. I could almost hear the way her breath caught, the sound of her world rearranging itself. I didn't know, she whispered. I swear, Ashley, I didn't know they were using your money. Of course you didn't, I said softly. You never had to. She started crying then, quiet and uneven. I didn't mean to stare. I know, but that doesn't change what happened. When the call ended, I didn't feel satisfaction, just exhaustion, like I'd finally closed a door that had been left open too long. 2 days later, my mother sent another email, longer, colder this time. You've ruined your sister's happiness. You've humiliated this family. We raised you to be better than this. I deleted it. But what I didn't expect was how public it would all become. One night, Vanessa texted me a screenshot, my mother's Facebook post. Sometimes your children disappoint you in ways you never imagined. We gave everything, and all we got in return was betrayal. Please pray for Ashley to find her way back to family. Hundreds of comments poured in from distant relatives and family friends. Most offered sympathy to my parents. Stay strong. Family is everything. She'll regret it someday. But buried among them were a few that made my throat tighten. Aunt Linda, maybe it's time to look in the mirror. Ashley's been treated unfairly for years. And my cousin Jake. She didn't steal anything. She took back what was hers. It shouldn't have meant as much as it did, but it did. For the first time, someone else saw what I'd lived through and said it out loud. That night, I posted my own reply under my mother's post. My hands shook, but my words didn't. Mom, I gave you $36,000 to help with medical bills. You used it to fund Brooke's trip to Paris. You forgot my birthday, and you've spent years pretending that was normal. I'm done pretending. If you wanted privacy, you shouldn't have made your disappointment public. Then I logged off. No hesitation this time. By morning, the post had exploded. Over 200 comments. Some were furious, others supportive. A few people messaged me privately, distant cousins, old family friends confessing they'd seen the favoritism all along. You were always the responsible one aunt wrote. They just never appreciated it. Vanessa called that afternoon. You good? I think so. That took guts, she said. You didn't just stand up for yourself, you broke a pattern. I smiled faintly. Feels strange though. Like I finally said everything I'd been holding in for years, and now there's just quiet. Quiet's good, she said. Means you're free. For the first time, I believed her. But freedom has a strange echo. A week later, my father called from an unknown number. Ashley, he began carefully, your mother is upset. This Facebook thing, it's gone too far. I didn't answer right away. Then I said, you mean the truth went too far? He sighed. We just want to fix this. You mean you want me to delete it? Maybe start over, as a family. Dad, I said, my voice steady. I tried starting over. You just kept rewriting the same story. He went silent. Then, quietly, your mother's heartbroken. She should be, I said. She broke something too. When I hung up, the weight that had followed me all my life finally loosened. I stood by the window, watching rain streak down the glass, and thought, they can call it betrayal if they want. I call it recovery. The next morning, Diane called with an update. My official offer letter from the hospital had arrived. I would start in 3 weeks. That night, I met Vanessa and Patricia for dinner. They brought flowers, tiny celebratory ones that looked like confetti. To new beginnings, Patricia said, lifting her glass. To boundaries, Vanessa added. To peace, I said softly. And when I clinked their glasses, I realized I wasn't celebrating a job. I was celebrating survival, the quiet kind that doesn't look like victory until you've lived through it. Somewhere between the laughter and the low hum of the restaurant, I felt a shift inside me. The world was wide again. The air was clear. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was the woman who walked away and built something better. When the call came again 2 weeks later, I was in the middle of folding laundry, white shirts, navy scrubs, the uniform of a new life. My phone buzzed. And before I could stop myself, I answered. Ashley, Dad said, his tone softer this time. We'd like to see you, just dinner, to talk. The word talk used to scare me. It meant control, guilt, reprogramming. But now, it just sounded tired. Fine, I said finally. But Brooke comes too. Why? Because I want all of us there when we finally stop pretending. He hesitated, then agreed. Friday night, 6 o'clock. I spent the next few days preparing, not my clothes or hair but my heart. I made a list in my notebook, what to say, what not to absorb. I practiced calm, like armor. The restaurant I chose was small, quiet, softly lit neutral ground. I arrived early, ordered water, and sat near the window where the city lights turned the glass into a mirror. My reflection looked steady. I barely recognized her. Brooke came first. She wore no makeup, her hair pulled into a loose bun, eyes tired but warm. You okay? She asked, her voice small. I will be. She nodded, hands folded around her purse. For a moment, we just sat there, listening to the hum of other people's conversations, laughter, clinking glasses, the ordinary music of lives that didn't hurt. At exactly 6, my parents walked in. My mother's smile was thin, rehearsed. My father looked older, shoulders slightly bent, eyes shadowed. They spotted us and came over. Thank you for meeting us, Dad said as they Saturday. I nodded once. Let's just say what needs to be said. Mom folded her napkin slowly, a performance of control. Ashley, we owe you an apology. The words sounded foreign in her mouth. I waited. We've been thinking about what you said, the money, the way we treated you. And you're right, we haven't been fair. But you were always so independent, so strong. We thought you didn't need us the way Brooke did. I let out a quiet laugh, not cruel, just tired. That's not fairness, Mom. That's favoritism you tried to rename. Her jaw tensed. We did what we thought was best. For who? Dad sighed. We just want to fix things, Ash. We want our family back. No, I said gently. You want your ATM back. He flinched, but didn't deny it. Is that fair? Mom snapped, her voice cracking for the first time. We're here, aren't we? Apologizing. What more do you want? I want you to mean it, I said softly. We do mean it. Then tell me one thing you're proud of me for. The question landed like a stone in water. She opened her mouth, closed it, looked at Dad. He looked away. The silence stretched, painful and pure. That's what I thought, I said. Brooke's voice broke through, trembling but firm. They don't get it, Ashley. They still think love is a transaction. Brooke, Mom started, but she shook her head. No, Mom, you raised me to think the world revolved around me while Ashley cleaned up behind us. I saw the bank records. I saw what you did, and you're still defending it. My mother's eyes filled with tears, not regret, anger. You too, after everything we've done for you? Dad reached for her hand, his voice tight. Let's not do this here. Why not? I said quietly. It's the first honest conversation we've ever had. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Mom asked, her voice low, shaking with fury. What do you want from us, Ashley? To beg? To crawl? No, I said. Just to take responsibility. To understand that what you did was wrong. That you hurt me. And that you can't buy forgiveness with excuses. Dad's shoulders slumped. We are going to lose the house. You have options, I said gently but firmly. Downsize. Work. Ask Brooke for help. I already told them no, Brooke said. I'm not enabling this anymore either. My mother's chair screeched as she pushed it back. This is ridiculous. We've apologized, and apparently that's still not enough. You're both ungrateful. We're free, I corrected softly. She stared at me, eyes narrowing, but for once, I didn't look away. I didn't shrink. I just sat there, steady, the way I'd always been, but this time, it was for me. My father stood slowly. Come on, he said to her. Let's go. She glared one last time before turning away. He paused, looked at me with something like shame. I hope you know we never meant to hurt you. You did anyway, I said. But maybe now you'll stop. They left without another word. The restaurant noise rushed back in the clatter of dishes, the hum of life going on. I sat there for a long time, the adrenaline draining out of me. Brooke reached across the table and took my hand. You okay? I am, I said quietly. For the first time, I really am. We ordered dinner, talked about her classes, my new job, the tiny pieces of normal life that had nothing to do with survival. When we left, the night was cool, soft. Outside the restaurant, she hugged me tightly. Thank you, she whispered, for showing me how to stand up. Thank you for showing up, I said. As I drove home, the city lights blurred in my rearview mirror. I thought about how strange it felt, peace after so much noise. That night before bed, I looked at myself in the mirror. No shaking hands, no red eyes, just me. Whole, steady, enough. And I realized that sometimes closure doesn't come from being understood. It comes from finally understanding yourself. The morning after that dinner, I woke before dawn and stood by my window, the city still half asleep under a quiet gray sky. For years, my mornings had begun with dread messages from my parents, Brooke's glittering updates, a heaviness that always came before coffee. But now there was only stillness. The silence didn't accuse me anymore. It blessed me. I started my new job that Monday. Walking through the glass doors of Virginia Commonwealth University Health, I felt like someone stepping into sunlight after a long tunnel. Caroline greeted me with a firm handshake, then introduced me to the team. The office hummed with energy printers whirring, phones ringing, people moving with purpose. I belonged here. Not because someone had chosen me, but because I had chosen myself. The days blurred beautifully. I learned the systems, handled my first billing cases, stayed late because I wanted to. My coworkers smiled when they passed my desk. They liked working with me. Every time Caroline dropped by with a quick, "Good work," I felt a small spark of pride light up in my chest, not the desperate kind that needed validation, but the quiet, grounded kind that said, I built this. Brooke started calling every week. Her voice had changed softer, slower, stripped of the breathless entitlement I used to envy. I started therapy, she told me one afternoon. It's weird, hard, but it's helping. I'm proud of you, I said, and meant it. We started meeting for coffee every other Sunday. No more apologies, no more ghosts. Just two women trying to learn each other again, without the noise of old comparisons. Sometimes we talked about childhood. Sometimes we just laughed about small things, bad dates, burnt dinners, Netflix shows. For the first time, being sisters didn't feel like competition. It felt like peace. Dad called occasionally too. His voice was humbler, quieter. Your mom's working part-time at a store, he said once. We sold the house. We're learning to live smaller. Then, after a pause, I just wanted to tell you I'm proud of you, Ash. Really proud. That one sentence undid years of silence. I cried after we hung up, not from sadness, but from the weight finally lifting. Months passed. My promotion came unexpectedly, assistant director of medical billing. Caroline handed me the letter herself. You've earned this, she said simply. I thought of the girl who'd once cried over a forgotten birthday cupcake. She wouldn't have believed this version of me existed. That winter, I moved into a townhouse with light that poured through every window. I filled it with plants, candles, and laughter. I hosted dinners with Patricia and Vanessa. Brooke came too, sometimes bringing homemade desserts that never quite set right. We didn't care. We ate, we laughed, we built something new out of all that had broken. On my 31st birthday, the living room was full. Music playing, glasses clinking, a cake glowing with 31 tiny flames. When everyone started singing, I didn't wish for love, or approval, or belonging. I already had them, not from the people who'd withheld them, but from the ones who chose me freely. Later that night, after the last guest left, I stood alone for a moment, staring at the flickering candles. I remembered last year the lonely cupcake, the pinned comment, "She's the only one who makes us proud." I smiled. I didn't need them to be proud of me anymore. I was proud of myself. Weeks later, an email arrived from Mom, just a few lines. Ashley, I've been thinking about everything. Your father says you're doing well, and I'm glad. I don't know how to say sorry properly, but I want you to know I see it now, what we did, how we hurt you. I'm trying to be better. Maybe one day we can talk. I read it twice, my heart surprisingly calm. Then I wrote back, "Thank you for saying that. I'm not ready yet, but maybe someday. I hope you're both doing okay." That was enough. Spring came again, warm and certain. My work thrived, my friendships deepened. Brooke finished her degree. Life didn't suddenly turn perfect, but it finally felt like mine. And sometimes, late at night, I'd think about that first decision, that quiet click of a withdrawal button, how small it had seemed, and how it had changed everything. Taking back that money wasn't revenge. It was survival. It was the first time I'd ever told the world I matter. Because in the end, the truest justice isn't making others pay. It's finally living in peace while they realize what they lost. And peace, real peace, was the richest thing I'd ever owned.